Hello and welcome to The Gaggle, where we challenge and, if necessary, destroy media narratives. I'm George Szamuely. With me today, of course, is co-founder of The Gaggle, Peter Lavelle, host also of RT's talk show, Crosstalk. Well, yesterday, Peter, there was two suicide bombings in Kabul airport. 13 US servicemen have apparently been killed. We don't know how many civilians, some numbers talk about 60, 70, some go all the way up to 100. So we don't know, huge, devastating losses yesterday. And then we had a kind of surreal news conference held by President Biden, in which he started going on about his son, Bo, whom he identified as having been an attorney for Kosovo, whereas in fact he was just a JAG. So I think he got confused about that. In any case, his son Bo, obviously he died young, was not killed in combat. He died of brain cancer, very sad, but completely irrelevant to what the subject was. He made other sort of somewhat bizarre statements, such as his promise to go after the people who were responsible for yesterday's attack. Quite how he was going to achieve it, given that he also said that he's going to adhere to the August the 31st deadline, was a bit of a puzzle. And then he got himself into a kind of a strange, after giving a moment's silence, which again seemed bizarre to in a news conference over moment's silence. But then he got into a bizarre exchange with Peter Doocy of Fox News, in which he seemed to want to blame everything onto President Trump because of President Trump's promise to withdraw from Afghanistan and the Taliban's promise in exchange not to attack US servicemen. This is all completely irrelevant because as things stand, it doesn't look like the Taliban was responsible for this attack. It was this ISIS-K, and the Taliban are not, to say the least, are not allies with ISIS-K. So that exchange was quite strange. And then, of course, later on that evening, Trump himself appeared on Hannity in a kind of a long telephone interview in which Trump was somehow suggesting that he would have prevented the Taliban advances, which is also, and not to mention, he said that, well, under his plan, the civilians would have been brought out before the US servicemen, and all equipment and everything would have been either taken out or destroyed. The problem with that thesis is that there's somehow no evidence at any time that Trump put those plans in place. In fact, Trump wanted to leave by December the 31st, 2020, and he didn't do so. However, one should say, in fairness to Trump, he did say everyone out by May the 1st, 2021. Now, had Biden adhered to that plan, at least everyone would have been out. And then when the Taliban took everything over, at least it wouldn't have been while the US servicemen and while US personnel were still in Afghanistan. So, I mean, Biden clearly has made an absolute mess of this. There was no need for him to extend the deadline. He extended it. The Taliban then mounted their offensive. Everything collapsed. But if he had stuck to the Trump deadline, he'd have been out by May the 1st. Whatever happened afterward, let everyone else take care of it. So in any case, as things stand, Biden is committed to that August the 31st deadline, which is a good thing. But I mean, there's no question, this has been an absolute fiasco of withdrawal, and a fiasco brought on by Biden and the military leadership. Right. Okay, Peter.
I mean, everyone keeps talking about the map in February, in March, and in May. And the agreement between the United States and the Taliban assumed that was going to happen. So the assumption now, looking backward, saying under Trump that never would have happened. Of course it would have happened. We were leaving. So, I mean, this timeline thing that they keep playing with, particularly on Fox, doesn't make any sense.
Well, no, but the offensive took place after May the 1st. So, I mean, at least all troops would have been out by May the 1st, and so Kabul would not have fallen while the Americans were still there.
But because Biden didn't accept the plan, this is what happened, okay? I'm not really particularly interested in all of the details of it, okay? Because people are just trying to create a narrative that doesn't exist or wouldn't have exist. I mean, this is like a drinking game, if you want, but it doesn't make any difference. It doesn't change anything. Also, George, if you look at all of the reporting on the double suicide attack, which was awful, horrific. And like you said, I've looked at sources in excess of 100 were killed, including 28 Taliban. Now, was that reported on Fox News?
All right. Well, let's leave Fox News aside. Let's just
but this is a narrative. No. This is
okay. All right, but that's still not the main issue today. So, all right. But go on.
You and I are in unison on here. The main issue today is that the deadline will be maintained, and it will. I mean, look. I mean, these news sources are exaggerating everything. For the most part, people are getting out. It looks like it's going to more or less work okay. There may be people that don't want to leave on top of that, okay? There may be people that have already left that didn't, you and I have lived in foreign countries. I'm not registered with the American embassy here. Are you registered with the American embassy?
No, I don't think so, no.
No, I don't, yeah. No. So they wouldn't be able to send me a message okay? I mean, the way it's being portrayed is very, very simplistic. I'm agreeing with you. The optics of it here, the lack of preparation, doing things in reversed order is all on Biden and his generals, okay? All on them, okay? But the most important thing is that, don't fall for what so many people are peddling, like Lindsey Graham. We have to go back in so we can get out. And that's a dangerous narrative that's being peddled.
Right, but that isn't gonna happen, obviously. I mean, that's now off the table. I mean, August the 31st, that's just 4 days away. So today's Friday, that means Tuesday, there's really no time to go in. But Biden's promise that he's somehow going to go after the people that who perpetrated this, I mean, that all seems complete pie in the sky. He sounded like George W. Bush after 9/11 when he blurted all that out. However, I mean, on the other hand, the very fact that this ISIS-K is as powerful as it is, and that it can perpetrate these sorts of attacks right under the noses of the Taliban, would suggest that Afghanistan is going to be a real problem for everybody, for all of Afghanistan's neighbors, because they clearly are not in control. And ISIS-K is obviously a very formidable force that the Taliban is going to have to cope with. And it's not clear that they're going to succeed doing this.
And you and I said this less than a week ago. Again, everybody thinks, it's hermetically closed, done, the Taliban, no. This is the end of this phase of their civil war. Right. Okay. You and I talked at great length. We talked with Glenn Deason. I am of the opinion that the Taliban are going to be far less interested in meddling in their neighbors' affairs than getting their own country in order. And we found out that they're not as powerful and all seeing is that maybe they wanted the world to think, or their enemies, I mean, they have $80 billion worth of American equipment, I mean, there's a lot of things going on here. And you have to remember, everyone, the US came in during a civil war and we're leaving during a civil war.
No, I think that's right. And I think the one thing we can at least discern from recent Afghan history is that it is the most militant of the militants who prevail. As things stand, ISIS-K, we don't know that much about, but it seems like they are a more militant version of the Taliban. In other words, while the Taliban is talking about, well, we got to get on with our neighbors, we can't be the center of terrorism anymore, no more heroin trade. These people, and and even talking about education for women, they're promising to continue educating women. So these people, these ISIS-K people, which comprises, I think, some Pakistanis and defectors from the Taliban, they're going to say, hey, these are sellouts, they're infidels, and they will fight against them, much as the Taliban regarded the rest of the Mujahideen as too moderate. So already we're getting the sort of the moderate and extremist breakdown. And as I say, in Afghanistan, extremists tend to prevail.
Yeah, and all the more reason for us to stay out of it.
Yeah,
okay,
I agree.
Look, for 20 years, they were telling us Pashtuns made up 40% of the Afghan military. No, it made up about 3%, okay? And then when it comes to this new terrorist group here, what is their ethnic makeup too? That is important in an Afghan context, okay? Very important.
Right. I think the reports seem to be, the reports seem to be that they're mostly Pashtun, but they do say there's a lot of Pakistani Pashtun. I mean, it's like, it seems that this movement that kind of originated in Pakistan, moved into Afghanistan. I mean, they were fighting against the Islamabad, who they thought were too moderate. Then they moved to Afghanistan. So obviously now they're going to think that the Taliban are too moderate. So this is going to be a problematic group. I mean, what the hell were they trying to achieve with this?
Well, I think obviously they wanted to, number one, show that they're a powerful force. Number two, add the humiliation.
Yeah,
and to show up the Taliban is that you're not the only game in town, folks. Okay, that obviously it was a terrorist event that was very deadly, a high body count, but it was a political statement, and whoever devised it really hit. They hit the mark. They hit their target. Okay, but it should be a wake up call to these armchair strategists in the U.S. is that stay away from it. You have no idea what's going on here. Why are you going to poke your nose into this here? You can demonize the Taliban all you want, and George and I are never going to lift a finger for them here. But you want to avoid a worse variant of them? Well, why don't you let the Taliban take care of it? Because they have an interest in doing that. Okay.
Right. No,
back off.
I think so. I think it's really, if you think about, the fight is now between the Taliban and the sort of the ultra Taliban, with ISIS-K. So we're really kind of talking about, well, where are the moderates? Well, there are no moderates. Where are the pro-Western people? Well, there are no pro-Western.
There aren't any.
Yeah, exactly.
When your enemies are in a circular firing squad, let them fire.
Right. No, that's right. And it is kind of, bizarre, when, I was reading somewhere, they had these one of these polling, I think Pew, one of these big polling organizations, what percentage of the population in Afghanistan wanted to live under Sharia law? Something like 99%. That's 99. That's after all of this, 20 years of Western liberal indoctrination. Something 99% want Sharia law. And I think that seems to be the political breakdown. So and I think that the Taliban probably, if they intend to survive, they're going to have to move into the fundamentalist wing. I don't think they're going to succeed just being, sounding moderate. You sound moderate, you're out.
Okay. I'm sure that there are hundreds of millions of Chinese that like Coca-Cola, George. Okay. Does that mean they want a Jeffersonian American-style democracy? No, it had nothing to do with it. See, what the U.S. in these buffoons, they like, if we sell them a jobs program, they'll become like us. No, we'll just take the money and we'll take Sharia law. This is like, these are like adolescents, making, they've had 20 years. And they still don't understand it.
No, that's exactly right. They don't really understand how you can take some of the superficial aspects of Western culture. That doesn't mean you embrace Western liberal doctrine. You know, you may like all sorts of things. You know, you may even quite like baseball or cricket or, you know, or, as you say, Coca-Cola. That doesn't mean, you know, you're going to go, oh, well, let's have parliamentary government. Let's have a, you know, a constitutional republic. No, we don't want that. I mean, so yeah, the notion that there's some package deal. No, there's no package deal.
Yeah, but, you know, in looking at the coverage, you know, across the spectrum here, George, it is so pathetic to watch it because no one seems to have learned anything except for maybe like Douglas McGregor. I mean, he's like the only person that I've been watching that has any kind of, you know, sober assessment of what's going on. You know, you have all of these war hawks that they are the architects of this, and they're going on and explaining what's going on. I find it's so bizarre. And it shows that the attention span is just, you know, it's like nanoseconds. But wasn't it you that, yeah, well, you were there, weren't you? No one's asking those questions.
Right. Yeah, no, that's right. It is interesting that Biden is adhering to this plan. He hasn't been thrown off. You know, no one's been able to push him aside. You have to, you know, however doddering and unimpressive he is when he appears, he's sticking to his guns. And a point that I made yesterday, and I tweeted this out, is that, you know, conservatives who are kind of, you know, banging their fists on the table seem to have forgotten Ronald Reagan's intervention in Lebanon. It started in 1982, but it ended in an absolute calamity in 1983 following the Beirut bombings, which killed more than 200 US Marines. And that was much more Reagan's responsibility than what's going on in Kabul is Biden's responsibility, because no one forced America to send its forces into Lebanon. I mean, you know, it's still kind of a mystery why Reagan did this. And then they stayed on as you know, with US and Israeli tutelage, the political dynamic in Lebanon changed in a way that Syria and Iran were bound to get very pissed off with. He stayed on, and it obviously led to this calamity because Syria and Iran were not going to tolerate, you know, essentially a kind of a Maronite Christian Israeli dominance over Lebanon. And that was a culmination. Reagan, you know, humiliation for Reagan. He pulled all of his the forces out. A year later, he was overwhelmingly reelected. So Republicans who think they're going to coast along on Afghanistan have got another thing coming.
You know, the interesting, there's a very weird wrinkle in all of this here. Again, you know, we'll get all the arrows and spears thrown at us. I'm glad Joe Biden is sticking to it. It seems to be the only thing that he, you know, we've said over and over again, does he really believe in anything? It seems like he believes in this. So, you know, let's give him that. But it's his delivery. And that's giving ammunition to people that are in favor of forever wars, for wanting to stay or leave and come back in. And it's his delivery that is hurting his case. Because watching his, you know, his presser yesterday, I mean, again, you know, does anybody speak Biden? Because I don't understand what he's talking about.
No. It's simply not, because he rambles. He makes all sorts of strange segues into irrelevancies. And then he does these strange things like, you know, let's have a moment's silence in the middle of a presser. And then he starts going on about Beau Biden, which was really embarrassing for him, because everybody says, well, this is really height of vulgarity to bring up your son dying from brain cancer in a completely irrelevant context. I mean, it was really inappropriate.
Was it CBS? I don't remember which network it was, but they did an interview with Joe Biden, and they didn't air it. I mean, it was taped, and they cut parts of it out. And he was making references to Beau, but he missed the country, the job, the year. I mean, it's very, very spooky. And that's why I bring up this point here, because as a point of policy, I support it, okay? But the way he's publicly defending his policy gives all of the doubters, and particularly his enemies, a segue.
Right. No, I think so. And he may be, there is a cunning to him, and he knows his history. He knows that, as the example of Ronald Reagan, that you, and then before that, Gerald Ford, you don't pay a political price for withdrawing. However humiliating it may be, however painful it is, the public soon moves on. Nobody wants to go back in.
And just to reinforce that point for our viewers here, people, and I remember I was very small, but people had enough of the war in Indochina. Okay, helicopters going off to the embassy, awful to see, but it's over. It's finally over. Okay, the American public didn't understand Reagan's intervention into Lebanon. I don't understand that. No. I don't think you understand. So the cost of that was very, very low. It was just like, whoa, that was awful, but it's over. They're out.
That's it. And that's why he just simply packed up and just left. I mean, after that Beirut bombing. Well, it was one of these interventions that segues into something else, because it initially was an attempt to help the PLO fighters evacuate Lebanon. So it was basically a kind of a military guard for them. But then they stayed on, as always. So after the PLO left Lebanon, they kind of stayed on, and then they kind of were co-opted into essentially a kind of a political reshuffle that Israel was trying to achieve in Lebanon, which was going to be, their allies, the Maronite Christians who would dominate Lebanon. And the Americans were just part of that. So of course, this would infuriate the Syrians and the Iranians, and they were bound to hit back. So, and this happened on, October 83. So it was about a year later. So it was a completely wasted year of occupying Lebanon, which achieved nothing at all for the United States.
And then our current example, if you look at the polling across the board, okay, Joe Biden is underwater, okay, across the board, okay. However, when you go into the minutia, are you for the decision to get out? Yes. Exactly. Yes. Exactly. Are you, I'm paraphrasing the question. Are you disturbed by the way the US is getting out? Yes. Right. It can both exist at the same time. And that's the reality, folks. And again, George and I have said it during our super chat yesterday, and we've been saying it since we've been talking about over the last week. Wars always end in a messy way. It's not that you sit down at a campfire and say, well, that's the way it is, so, I'll send a Christmas card or something like that. No, this is war. War is awful. It's messy. And once you're in a conflict, you have no idea what's going to happen. It's called the fog of war. That's what those 2 suicide attacks were. That's the fog of war. How to react to that? How? Okay, you have to reassess here. And then those 2 jackass congressmen showing up, that was just absolutely absurd, that this is a critical thing. We need to get people out, and they are getting out, okay?
Right, but again, even that is an absurdity, because why exactly is the United States getting so many Afghans out? We've already talked about the enormous problems that's going to cause for everybody else. But if I focus less on getting everybody out and just simply get the Americans out, get equipment out, then the whole thing could have been wrapped up much more quickly. Instead, they started focusing this hysteria of getting all these Afghans out. So already something like 100,000 Afghans they've brought out. And then what? How many? They're going to try. Because they still got 4 or 5 days. It's quite likely. I mean, even yesterday, I think something like 7,000. After all what happened yesterday, they still managed to get 7,000 out. So they're just going to go absolutely bonkers for the next 4 days, getting everybody out. Huge problems down the road for that. But again, if they'd not wasted their time on this, then the whole thing could have been wrapped up much more quickly.
One of the iconic pictures that we have of this is it C-17? What are those really big planes, Yeah. And it's all wall to wall with people. Yeah. I took my magnifying glass and I started looking at it. That looks like an Afghan. That looks like an Afghan too. Right. I think, okay, I mean, because of the dress, the head garb, and things like that. Okay, right. And so again, it kind of begs the question. I mean, what is the selection process?
There isn't it. I think
that was the rhetorical question.
Right, exactly.
And what we got, because there were a lot of other people like myself that looked at that picture and like, And then they came up, oh, the vetting process. They came up with, they invented it because a lot of people are saying, that's a kind of a strange picture.
Right. Right.
Okay. And then, they're going to be in this country, and the vetting and all of this. Okay. Again, George and I have just raised the absurdity repeatedly.
The point is that
they're going to have these regional hubs, while the southern border is wide open.
Right. You're talking about 100,000. Let's say 100,000. If you get another 100,000, we're talking about 200,000. There is no government in the world, none. The most efficient government, think of whatever the most efficient government in the world is, Switzerland, Germany, I don't know. There's no way that they can vet 200,000 people in a matter of a few days. I mean, it cannot be done. And here you're talking about Afghanistan, where I'm sure government records are not exactly impeccable and kept up to date. So there's just no way. So everywhere, it's basically, you get on a plane, you're out of here. And then that's it. Then you're just shoveling this problem onto everyone else, shoveling it onto other countries, because now they're going to try and coerce other countries into taking them. And of course, shoveling it onto Americans. Once they're here, they're here. You can't get rid of them.
Also, good point. Again, George and I try to think about the next few steps ahead. Look at it this way, folks. Under most laws in the European Union and American law that George and I know, if they step foot on American soil, you got it. You got your payday. Right. Okay. So there's going to be chain migration. Mm-hmm. And then on top of that, everyone back in Afghanistan can say, hey, they pulled it off. That means all I have to do is step foot on some kind of, safe haven soil, and I'm going to be safe. That's going to be another incentive for another role. As I said to you a few days ago, once people start leaving these porous borders, in the immediate vicinity, keep on walking. Turkey's there. Okay, go to Turkey.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And so what you now have is, on top of everything else, you've got a border that's no longer exists in the United States. You already have spiking crime rates in the United States. So you're adding another layer on this, of a kind of a massive population dump, which can only contribute to an even greater crime spike in the United States. So this is an absolute calamity for America and for anyone else. I mean, there's a story today that Ursula von der Leyen is offering financial incentives to countries to take in Afghans. It's like, hey, how about 10 million? I don't think so. 20 million? Nah. So they're just offering this because no one wants them.
Isn't it really interesting how easy it is to give away money that's not even yours?
Not exactly. Yeah.
All righty, we're obviously keeping an eye on this here. All I really would like to convey here is we need a little bit more sobriety in looking at this thing here. I mean, watching American cable it's really bizarro land watching it, okay? Just trying to drive political narratives. George and I are trying to look at, what happened in 2015 with the wave of immigration there, and the lack of competence with the withdrawal, which was agreed to way in advance here. I just don't have a lot of confidence in the competence of these people whatsoever. And I wish the media, I know this is in vain, would be more responsible. All right, everyone, we're on Locals, so please go to thegaggle.locals.com. As you saw yesterday, George and I did our first Super Chat on YouTube. We're going to try to make it a weekly endeavor. The store is up. We've done 3 or 4 Q&As. George has done a live stream. We also are doing kind of guest appearances with other people on Locals, which is really, really a lot of fun. If technically it works, we had a little bit of problem last time, but I persevered. I came back like 10 times. So, take a look at the other people at Locals. We'd like to talk to everyone. We do believe in community. And last but not least, we have the tip jar. We don't like seeing it empty. Okay, you get my drift. Okay.
That's right. So we don't have billionaires bankrolling us. So we rely on the kindness and support of fellow gagglers. So please donate whatever you can. And remember, if you like The Gaggle, please like, share, and subscribe. See you soon. Bye.